Alright, I do not have internet right now, but that shouldn't stop me from making some progress on this project. Last time I was working on a collectible, being able to collect something. I created this collect manager here, which will emit a new kind of message called entity collected, and we wanted to store that into the GenServer, so SpaceServer here, except that I realized that whenever we get something like entity released, we have to update two maps, one for the new grabbed and newly released, because if you're releasing it, then you shouldn't also be grabbing it, right? There's a conflict here. And if you've collected something, you kind of want to move it out of grabbing it as well. So I wanted to change the storage data structure. So we can go to the init. That's where this happens, init here. And instead of all of these different things here, let's leave grabbed, released, collected. At least these can just be entity. Entities. What about used? Used. Not sure yet. Let's leave this here for a moment. Okay, so we have just entities, and let's go fix those setters. So when we get entity grabbed, here's the entity ID, and we want to say that new entities would be put into the map of entities at the entity ID, and we want to put this payload actually we can keep the message and we can keep the payload, and the only other redundant thing is that it would have an extra entity ID, and it's not too bad. What if we just gave it the whole event and just let it have it? Then you wouldn't have this. You just put the state into entities, the new entities, and that tells you it was grabbed. Do we like that? What if I did want to remove the entity ID out of that? How do you remove like a deep delete? Oh, no internet. No internet. Okay, so let's just do this for now. Okay, then we've got entity released. So we'll do the same thing. The new entities would just be, we'll put into state entities with the entity ID, and just give it the event. And it might have too much information, but we can optimize for space storage later. So we'll say that the state becomes entities and new entities goes there. Then we get, oh, what's going on here? New entities map. Oh, new entities equals. Alright, finally we get that the entity was collected. And here's the new type. So entity collected, which will be this thing. Okay. And it just says who collected what. Okay. And we do the same thing. So and actually, in all of these, we're doing the same thing. We could potentially optimize this. Copy here, paste here. Right? There's no difference in these. So unless you're going to do some particular cleanup, these are all quite redundant. Grabbing, releasing, collecting gives you back the original event. So really this is just setting the last event. Handle event. We can just subtract this to save last event for entity. Unless we want to do some particular cleanup. We'll just leave it here like this for now. Okay, so then what? Yeah, now you want to pull it out of this in a slightly different way. The about, there's a function called about, which will return agents and entities. Let's do that and return that. Alright, so then now in the scene manager, when we are doing our listening, channel listening, we're going to listen to about space, and then we're just going to go through one set of entities this time. Okay, let's change this shape of data. So we're going to have agents, we're going to have entities. Alright, so it's going to have an entity ID, and it's going to have a type now. This actually becomes a type of types event. Okay, so that's convenient. Then we can reuse this type. It's just one of these things that came back. Okay. And then going back here, we have this, and we get the entity. We're going to find that. So if we can find the entity, we have to determine what kind of event this is. So now, if so this is actually an event. If event message is equal to event name grabbed. So if you grabbed it, you need to parent it, and this is what this section was about. So then you do all of this stuff, which I think we probably could abstract into an avatar function, like fit something in their hand. Otherwise, if it's entity released, you do this stuff, which I think also we can put into an avatar function. And then finally, it's the collected, which we can probably just hide that. So let me take a quick break and come back. Okay, let's look into the avatar class. So we have methods for creating the avatar, disposing the avatar, posing the avatar, setting the hand raised position, static end member, and stopping animations, setting the pose, finding the avatar head, finding or creating the avatar head, finding the hand, finding or creating the hand. So I think we want a static method to place entity in hand. We want the member ID of who we're talking about and the hand, and we need the entity ID, and which is a string, and the scene, everyone scene. Let's just call it grab entity. And likewise, I think we need one for release entity. We just need the entity ID. Optionally, can you have the position or rotation? Yeah, this might need a couple more things. This could use the optionally position and rotation of the entity. Position and rotation of the hands, I don't think we really need to. Yeah, I think, yeah. Entity pause rot, which can be a pause rot. Yeah, cannot follow an optional parameter, so just give this, which is a pause rot, or no. Okay, so that's grab entity, release entity, and we just need the scene. Alright, so when we're grabbing the entity, let's go over here. We're going to do some of this stuff here. Okay, so first, can we find the entity? And if you can't find the entity, just quit. If not entity, just return. Alright, so at this point, you have the entity. And then, okay, we already know we're in the grabbed. Okay, then we want to look for the hand, so avatar, find the avatar hand, which is this member ID, this hand, and given scene. Okay, that's the hand, and if the hand, we'll do something, duplicate identifier for hand. Okay, hand here is a string, so this is hand mesh. And so if you don't have a hand mesh, you can also return. Alright. So at this point, we want to see if it's, we're going to unset this, unset the parent. Quick fix, I need this. And you're going to take the, okay, if it's not the shootable, we can take advantage of this. And then set the parent to the hand mesh. Otherwise, just set the entity parent to the hand mesh. And that's what happens when you grab an entity. So now over here, we can remove all of this. We could just say avatar grab entity given the event payload member ID, which I know is there. And what else? Then you need the hand, which is event payload hand. And then you need the entity ID, which is here. And then any entity position rotation, which is also on the event payload entity pause rot. Finally, you give this scene. And that should do all of this. But you only do that if if event message is equal to event name entity grabbed was the last message you got there. So it's grabbed, it's owned by something. Okay. Now if it's released, you're going to do some of this stuff. Let's grab this. Let's go over to avatar and pass it in here. So first we're going to find the entity that needs releasing. So we'll say scene, can we find the entity? Alright. If you found the entity, you're going to unset the parent. You're going to set the position and rotation to the last known place where you released it, which is, oh, okay, so we do need to know a little bit about the releasing. Release, and you want to know where you released the object. So we want the entity pause rot, which is a pause rot. And then go ahead and free and place that thing there. Okay, so over in Scene Manager, else if event m is event name, and we have entity released, then we want to do avatar release entity with event payload member ID. The event payload entity, pause rot, and finally the scene. And then we can remove this for all the releasing stuff. And then finally, for the collection, else if the event message was that the event was collected, yeah, we should maybe make an avatar thing for that too. Because if it's being held anywhere, you could also unparent it. And it is collected by someone. I don't have a problem putting it here. Static collect entity. We'll have an entity ID. I think that's all we need. We'll simply find it in the scene. And so we need the scene. And then what happens? We get the entity, we unparent it. If it is being held by somebody, we don't quite need to care what the thing is. We're just going to hide it. So entity dispose, I suppose. Assuming it won't come back, let's just dispose it. Okay. So over here, if you get an entity collected, and this payload has, I think, member ID and the entity ID. And so we'll just go avatar collect entity with the do we need the member ID? Because then you can update their state. I don't know yet. Let's see. So event payload entity ID and this scene. Okay. We got internet back, so let's try to see if these things work. Open up Chrome. Looks like there's some JavaScript error. Just didn't even load up. Scene Manager has an error somewhere. I don't see any underlined string here, but it says enable WebXR experience. What is the error exactly? Cannot read properties of undefined. And so XR manager was not defined. Let's see, when do we define XR manager? Let's do a diff. I don't see, okay. I don't see where XR manager is created. Oh wait, here, this XR manager new. It's created after the camera is created. So create camera, XR manager becomes this thing. Is there any errors in here? No, the constructor doesn't do anything. And when is this called? So this is called when the client is ready. And we will call this XR manager. So it should work. Let's just restart the server. Okay, seems like it is working this time. And okay, what is this thing? This is something to collect. And do we have a gun somewhere? We have no gun. Let's move this. Okay, there's the gun. And we can pick up the gun. Let's say with the space ID. Let's look at state. SpaceServer state. We know nothing about the entities. And we will actually go back and toggle this off. We will go and grab this gun. Now what do we have in terms of entities? We have, look at this, we have this whole payload. The last thing we received was this, it was grabbed. And then if we release it, it was a 5,000 and now it's going to be a 510, which I'm assuming is released. Okay, so it'll just be in a release position forever. Now I'm going to come over here and try to collect this. Okay, maybe I'm a little too far. Collect it. Collect it. Okay, we're not collecting anything. Let's have the collect manager say something, right? Oh, I think we're emitting the collection, but maybe we're not doing any, we're not listening for it yet. Actually we should be. Let's do a console log should collect. But over in the scene manager, when we're doing stuff with events, which is down here, I believe we are, oh no, we are not. We have to add something here for when an entity, so we should move these into some kind of avatar manager, because where we're processing them now is in the about space. So it's collected, and I think it is collected. So if we look over here, it should be, yeah, we get this new entity 5030, which I believe is collected. Event names 5030, it is collected. So this other thing is collected, but we need to reload the page in order to see it. And now, yeah, it is collected. And of course, the gun is released back in its origin. Really, it didn't stick with us. Let's see. 510 released, and it's quite close to the origin, but that's not where this is. That doesn't look like where this is. In fact, let's take a look at it. So if you look at where this gun is, its current position is at 0. Yeah, it's at its original position. And so it doesn't look like it actually, let's see, 823, 82C, 82C, yeah, payload. Doesn't look like it found it and moved it, so there might be a bug there. Let's see if we can fix that. So we can go to scene or avatar. We want to release entity. Console.log in release entity. Did we get here? Okay, we are in release entity. And do we find entity? Console.log. Entity is the entity. Entity is null. We did not find it. Why didn't we find it? Oh, what is the name of this thing? Get matched by the ID. And we're looking for entity ID here. And release entity, and it's only this thing? That ain't the right thing. I think we passed in the wrong variable. Going back into scene manager, we want to release entity, right? We want to send the entity ID, not the member ID. And now I think it is in the right position. Okay. Okay, so the next step is refactor event handling for grab, release, collect to an avatar manager. Okay, we'll do that in the next video.